Good morning, everybody. It's Friday morning, June 26th. We're glad you're with us for the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. Our agenda this morning, we'll see if we have any success stories. We'll then go to our committee reports. Then we'll have our speaker coming up around 10 o'clock. And at the very end, I'll give everybody an opportunity to put in their 30-second introductions so we know who you are, and we'll get that email list out to we'll get that distributed to everybody who's attended today's meeting. Just as a reminder for those of you who are on Zoom, at the very bottom of the screen, there's a place, or could be at the top right now, to click on participants. That way you can see who else is on the list. And we ask that if your full name isn't there, and I'm looking right now, and it looks like, let's see, we have any strange names? I think we've got everybody. I think everybody so far got a full name on there, but if you don't have your full name listed, please hover over the more thing where the blue arrow is, and you can then click on where it says rename, and then you can go back and rename yourself. That way we know who you are, and we can count you on the roster, and we'll make sure you get the follow-up email this afternoon. For those of you on Facebook, please just enter your name in the comment box, and we'll make sure we get your name added. And we'll have an email address at the end where you can send details if you're brand new to the group. For those of you who are on Zoom, there's a chat box at the very bottom. You're welcome to enter questions as things pop up. And for those of you who are on Facebook, please just enter your questions in the comment box. I am monitoring that, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered for you throughout the day. Once again, for those on Zoom, there's a couple different view options. There's a speaker view and a gallery view. The lower left is a speaker view. Where that red arrow is, right in between the picture and the PowerPoint, you can slide that back and forth to make the speaker bigger, make the speaker smaller, whatever you'd like to do. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to see in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. Well, we like to start the meeting off with success stories. So if anybody has any landings, I didn't get any emails this week, but if you've got any good news, please unmute your mic and let us know. Going once, going twice. All right, we don't have any landings today. All right, well, we'll move on. Okay, Eldon, Job Fairs, Career Fair workshops coming up.
All right, good morning, everybody. The information that I'm about to present to you comes from the calendar tab on the website careerdfw.org. I cover career and job fairs and special workshops. There are many other categories of events. The calendar aggregates all of the important events going on throughout the Metroplex over the next weeks and months. This week's career and job fairs, and as an aside, I do go over these fairly quickly. If there's something that you're interested in, please feel free to go to the calendar and click on that event. There's usually extra information there, including a link in which to attend the meeting and or register for it, or at least find out more about the event. This week's career and job fairs, well, as you can see from the screen, there are no virtual or other events listed in this category for this coming week. Special workshops or events. Online only at this time, the Who You Know workshop. Monday, June 29th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. There is a Zoom link on the calendar for that one. It's hosted by Foster Williams. And if you don't know Foster, you need to get to know Foster Williams, or as he's affectionately known, the Job Father. Online Tuesdays at 1 p.m. online. This is a rotating event between Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, and Ruth Lipsky. There's a Zoom link for that. It's Tuesday, June 30th from 1 to 2:30 p.m.
And this week will be Terry Sullivan.
And if you haven't heard Terry talk about LinkedIn, I urge you to attend that one. let me see, online interviewing Wednesdays at 1 p.m. with Mark McDonald and Walt Glass, a Zoom link for that. That's Wednesday, July 1st from 1 to 2. And this week's session is on how to prepare an interview when you have limited time. Coming up, online resume Thursdays with Carol Raquel, Certified Professional Career Coach. There's a Zoom link for that. That will be Thursday, July 2nd from 1 to 2 p.m. And finally, online meeting, what I've learned about your job search that you may not know. That's July 2nd from 2 to 4 p.m. It's sponsored by Career Care at St. Andrews. And Jeff will be our speaker for that one. And he may have a comment or two about what he knows about your job search that even you do not know. And that's it for this week.
Eldon, thank you very, very much. So I got a question. If everybody would open up their participant box, you can just enter your answer in the comment box on Facebook. Do you know someone who lives outside the DFW area who is unemployed? So do you know somebody outside the DFW area who's unemployed? Please click yes or no in the participant box. Okay, well, it looks like maybe 2 out of 5 people know somebody who lives outside of the DFW area. The reason I ask this, and even if you know people in the DFW area who are unemployed, if they don't know about Career DFW, please let them know about it. Please share the information that's here. That where the blue arrow is, those are you can find a networking group that's holding an online meeting. Let people know. You know, anybody from around the country is welcome to join any one of these meetings. All the links are there. Here's what the calendar looks like each week. So please check it out and just let people know that, you know, there's plenty of things going on each week for some really great training that they can do. And if you know anybody who just lost their job and doesn't know what to do, I've added a banner on the Career USA and Career DFW websites. I just lost my job. What do I do now? Click here for help. And it's got a great one-page little handout on just some career tips, things you should do first, what you do second, just some great documents on how to get your job search going. Mark McDonald, the practice interview team.
All right, good morning, everybody. And the practice interview team is meeting virtually any day of the week now. So this great thing about the practice interview team from what it used to be when we used to meet on Wednesdays is now we can meet on any day of the week, and we can help people from all over the country. So I am scheduling an interview now. I think it'll be on Tuesday for somebody from California. And I haven't actually had a chance to talk to him yet. We've exchanged messages. I'm really curious to find out how they found out about the pit crew, but there you go. We're going national. So the pit crew does what the pit crew's always done. We give you a chance to practice your interviewing skills. And you know, you get, every time you practice, you get better. Sometimes we ask how much time you spent working on your resume, and people will give us, you know, numbers anywhere from, you know, a few hours to 40 hours. And then we'll ask how much time you spent practicing, and it's not a very big number at all. Sometimes it's 0. So we give you an opportunity to practice in the virtual world, and it's a very customized and personalized experience. You send in a job description along with your resume, and then I have a group of volunteers who've all been hiring managers, and they take a look at the information and they personalize the interview experience that you have. And then when it's over, it takes about 45 minutes. You'll get feedback on the things you did well and the things you need to improve upon, and maybe some other things to think about how to approach the interview. Every session is a bit of an education session. And we also ask, you know, we're not afraid to ask, and we'll take you through the more difficult questions that may come up, like why did you leave your last job, or what are your salary requirements, those kinds of things. So that's the Dallas Pit Crew. If you want to have a practice interview, just send your information to me by email. I also need to know when you're available for the next couple of days. So now, if you send it in to me today, I'd be trying to set it up on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'd need to know your availability on those days. And yeah, I think that's it. Now, we also, when we used to meet face-to-face, we'd spend 15 or 20 minutes in a group learning session. And now we've transitioned those to a webinar on Wednesday afternoons. And Jeff runs them and Walt and I present. We spend more time now because we have about an hour to discuss the topic. And we came up with 13 topics we'd like to cover. We're on topic number 12. So the first 11 are on Career USA YouTube channel. Jeff posts them up, and so you can go and take a look at them. This coming week, we're going to talk about some miscellaneous topics that will build your confidence. So things that didn't really fit in a particular category, but once you learn how to deal with them, you'll be much more confident. And that's how to prepare for an interview when you have very little time. So what's important when you have to prioritize. Dealing with difficult interviewers. So the grumpy interviewer, the sleepy interviewer, the distracted interviewer, the uninterested interviewer, the aggressive interviewer. We'll talk about all of those. And then, getting your head in the right space a bit as well. So that's what's coming up. And then 2 weeks, after spending 12 weeks teaching you how to interview well, we're going to talk about some common mistakes that people make. So if you can avoid those mistakes, that puts you ahead as well. And so then we'll have a special speaker the middle of July the 15th, and then we'll start the cycle over with session number 1.
Mark, thank you very much. Walt.
Good morning, everyone. Walt Glass here. I enjoy helping people build skills and confidence for successful job interviews. Now, a good successful job interview, my definition, is your ability to present the 3 legs of what people are buying, and that's who you are, what you do, and how you can help them. So I give suggestions, strategies, structures, potential ways to go about answering the different categories of questions. And so it's a very, very fundamental interview. It is a workshop. So you do get a video, you get a practice interview, but we really talk about what it is we need to change to improve ourselves so that we can differentiate ourselves from those other candidates. Very informal. We like to have fun. It's learning without squirming. There's no need to have to sit there on a hot seat to learn how to improve your interviewing skills. So you have to be registered to attend. Look me up on LinkedIn and look at my About section. It's very interesting that I have people send me messages through LinkedIn and say, I'd like more information. Well, there is more information. It's right there on my LinkedIn page in the About section. So you can look there, find out. There's my Yahoo email address is in there, walt_glass@yahoo.com, to find out what's available, and I'll send you some available dates to schedule you, and we'll get you on the roster. So I'd love to have you join. Come on down. So, in interviewing, do you ramble? That makes the job search a gamble. Learning and practice gives you the handle for interviewing skills to unscramble.
Great. Walt, thank you very, very much. Normally we'd have a lot of applause going on right now, but everybody is muted. Thank you very much. All right. Career tip of the week. Please check it out every week. It's on careerusa.org and careerdfw.org. A new tip every Saturday afternoon. So Sue Ellen.
Today's tip is by Matt Haber. And originally the document was called How to Hire During a Pandemic. But I got to thinking, most of you are not looking how to do the hiring, but how to get hired. So I've changed it around a little, and I think you'll find it interesting. While a staggering 20.5 million jobs were lost in April, with 33 million Americans seeking unemployment benefits since the start of the pandemic, many businesses continue to hire. And it's not just Amazon. Industries, including technology, healthcare, and financial services, continue to bring on employees. So companies are still in hiring mode right now, and they're finding new ways to figure out if a candidate will be a good fit. But there are no handshakes, no office tours, no getting to know you lunches. By the way, Glassdoor created an index of COVID-19 hiring surge companies, so you might check that out. The challenge, of course, is hiring remotely. How can a hiring manager get a sense of an applicant over video? How do you communicate daily life at your company without an on-site visit? How can you ensure that the person you brought on to work remotely during this crisis will fit in well once you're back in the office? Now, thanks to social distancing measures, companies must rely on one-to-one video conferences or phone calls to interview candidates for all roles at the company, including operations, customer service, sales, and engineering. And that process can be super challenging. But that's the reality companies have to deal with, and you need to be ready for. One possible way to improve is to beef up pre-screening questions. A company wants to make sure you really want to do this job. For example, if someone is applying for a warehouse job, you may be asked, how do you feel about standing all day? And for a customer support role, are you comfortable being on the telephone all day? Companies may not have asked those questions when unemployment was lower because they didn't want to risk turning applicants off. But that's not as big a risk now with so many people out of work. There are a lot more people to choose from now. Some companies are making hiring processes quicker to meet the increase in demand the company is experiencing. They want to do everything they can to get folks into jobs, and they have to get creative. Another way employers are trying to ensure they find the right people during this unusual hiring period is doing more diligence, more due diligence, especially since it may be harder to get a read on a candidate solely over video or the phone. References are really being emphasized now, and companies are saying that they're very concerned about culture fits post-corona. Companies recommend asking open-ended but telling questions during an interview, like, tell me about your day, or how do you run your day? The answers to a prompt like that may reveal how self-directed a person is, how flexible he or she may be, qualities that may serve the company well in a work-from-home world. To understand how companies successfully hire remotely, it's worth looking at how an entirely remote company pulls it off. Before you get down to the work they'll be doing, you have to be sure they're a fit for your organization. These companies begin the process by knowing exactly the kind of candidate they're looking for and are relying on screener questions and multiple rounds designed to engage and let either side opt out. They don't talk to 30 candidates for a position. They talk to 3 or 5. For companies that previously tried to stand out by touting fun office perks, beach volleyball courts, office dogs, free lunches, and the like, the new hire pitch needs a significant revision. Absent an expensive workplace and swag, a company's culture, mission, and career development are bigger draws. Silicon Valley, as well as other industries, may be at the end of the arms race around office space slides and massage. With many tech companies shedding thousands of jobs, those perks now seem like signifiers of a long ago era. Companies are getting very good at employer branding, talking culture, sharing videos, trying to convey what it's like to be on a team without stepping foot in an office. One company changed its Zoom backgrounds to be a picture of the office to give a greater sense of where a candidate may work. Another company is sending lunch to candidates' homes to invite them to a lunch meeting. Anything to make the process feel more welcoming wherever they are. Companies are starting to think about the post-COVID world. Some think we'll see 70 to 80% work distance working for them. As one hiring manager put it, free beer doesn't matter anymore. It's the culture that matters now. I'd like to give you 2 examples of distance working that have hit me personally. I think everybody is aware of the culture at Southwest Airlines. And my son was thrilled when he got a job at Southwest. in their IT department. Well, he's now manager of the IT department at Southwest, and he was told to work from home near the beginning of the COVID outbreak. Now he tells me that he may never go back to the office, that IT is one area that can successfully work from home. Another example is field service technicians and their managers. I worked for a company that had a huge field service organization, 3,500 techs all over the country and 20 managers. They often complained that they felt disconnected from the home office. And so that was a challenge to try and get them into the corporate structure of how we felt about employees. It was a challenge from both ends. Ultimately, somebody who's willing to work on their own is someone who is very independent. So be sure you understand yourself and your own desires before you take that kind of a job. So good luck in your search. I hope this helps.
Sue Ellen, thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
All right. It's time for our video clip of the week. For those of you who watched the Belmont Stakes last week, you may have missed the earlier race that happened. And we'll get it started right now. Here's an earlier race.
And they're off. Out of the gate, it's coronavirus, followed closely behind by Wuhan-style lockdown. On the outside, it's global pandemic working hard against Flatten the Curve. Social distancing got off to a slow start, but he's now neck and neck with Flatten the Curve. On the inside, it's just a little flu, followed by Trust the Experts. As they pass the quarter pole, 18 months vaccine is working hard to get past Plaquenil. Dr. Fauci is 3 lengths back of the leaders. Stimulus plan is trying to squeeze by PPE as they enter the backstretch. But out on the outside, here comes economic shutdown. Open by Easter, gets bumped a little bit by Dr. Fauci. Flatten the Curve and economic shutdown are battling it out as they head past the half-mile pole. Distance learning stumbled out of the gate, and it looks like he won't be able to get back into it. Not his day today, folks. They are moving at a brisk pace and all clustered together except for my bank account, which is way back of the pack. He might be injured. They might have to pull him up. Toilet paper is nowhere to be seen. He's lost in the pack. As they head into the far turn, it's social distancing still in the lead, but Daily Briefing is lurking 1.5 lengths back. It's a tremendous race, folks. I've never seen anything like it. And now, Cure Worse Than the Disease is starting to make his move. As they enter the top of the stretch, cabin fever is charging hard, but social distancing is holding him off. Economic shutdown is still looking strong, and he's nose to nose with Cure Worse Than the Disease. And on the inside, here comes Dr. Fauci, and down the stretch they come. It's social distancing and economic shutdown now neck and neck. I don't believe it. Dr. Fauci is trying to keep pace, and with 1 furlong to go, it's economic shutdown, social distancing, and Dr. Fauci. And as they come to the wire, it's... oh my God, it's no one fucking knows by a head. Oh, an incredible race, folks. 11-7-12 trifecta pays 117.39. Woo!
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of a race. Yeah, I don't know what happened to my bank account, Nancy. All right. So coming up here in just a couple minutes, we'll be hearing from Jeff Crilley about talking about free publicity. Next week, we will have a meeting, even though next Friday is the official observed day of July 4th. Most of us can't go anywhere, and most of us aren't working. So we will have a meeting. We'll do open forum next Friday. And we also will have a presentation on how to use Google Voice. It'll be about 15 minutes presentation on how to use Google Voice. And then the rest of the time, we'll open it up to open forum, and we'll answer whatever questions you've got. Coming up on July 10th, we have a labor law attorney who's going to talk about labor law and issues that are happening. And I think it'll be sort of interesting, especially from her aspect, talking about, you know, with the new work environment and what's going on, what kinds of things is she seeing. And then on the 17th, we'll have our speaker talking about networking the old-fashioned way. Just a reminder, Career DFW, even though we're broadcasting on the Career DFW Facebook page and the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group are 2 different organizations. The common thread is that I happen to lead both. You're welcome to overthrow me here and put on the North Dallas Plano focus group anytime. If anybody wants to take it over, you're welcome to, but you're not going to get career DFW out of my hands. All right, so our speaker today is Jeff Crilley. In fact, let me see if he's gotten on. Jeff, are you on the line? I'm not sure if he's even on the line yet. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't see Jeff on here yet. Okay. Well, our speaker would be Jeff Crilley if he was here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the recording here for a second. So let's see here. Jeff is getting connected. Okay. Jeff, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, for those of you who've watched Channel 4 News in the past, Jeff was a reporter with Channel 4 for many, many years. I used to watch him all the time. In fact, he actually interviewed my daughter back when she was 4 or 5 years old at a preschool many, many years ago. So Jeff's been around. He's done a lot of great things. Several years ago, he left Channel 4 because his book that you see here, Free Publicity, was a success. He was selling more books, and so he decided to open his own PR firm, and I will let Jeff sort of tell you the rest. So Jeff, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. I love speaking to your group. Seems like we've been doing this for about a decade now, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I have a interesting path to where we are now, and the story is about grit and determination and getting knocked down and picking yourself up. And so I think one of the reasons Jeff keeps inviting me back year after year is because this hard work story really, I think, is the secret to life. So my journey begins in college. I was a sophomore in college, and I got an internship at a little TV station in Lansing, Michigan. So I'm going to Michigan State, and I'm cleaning toilets in the dorms in the morning, and in the afternoon, I'm getting on a little moped. I'm driving to the TV station, and I am working until after the 11 o'clock news in Lansing, Michigan, helping put on that newscast. Now, I wasn't doing reporting. I was an intern, which means I'm doing grunt work. I'm pouring coffee for the anchors. I'm writing down what the competition led with. I'm making calls to police departments, finding out if anybody died, typical intern type stuff. And I remember at the time that there were about 4 other interns working alongside me. And they were, have you heard that old expression, are you a crab in a barrel? Because crabs like to pull the others down. That's why crabs can't escape the barrel. These other interns were trying to pull me down. I was trying to outwork everybody. Instead of doing the 20 hours a week that I was supposed to do for college, I was doing 60 hours a week. It was really, 7 days a week. And I was working tirelessly to hopefully prove to the boss that I was the most exceptional intern he'd ever seen, and he was going to give me a job. Or at least that's how the movie played out in my mind. But all these other interns were like, Jeff, why are you working so hard? I mean, why are you putting in all these hours? You know they're never going to hire you. You're delusional. And I just kind of put my blinders on, and I kept working, coming in day after day, week after week. And it was a 10-week internship. And I had it in my mind that at the end of the 10 weeks, the news director was going to come shake my hand and say, Jeff, we have never seen anyone work as hard as you. Please join our team. Well, the 10 weeks came and went, and that scene in the movie didn't play out. So I had a crisis. If I left, who knows if I'd ever get back in this TV station again. And so I came up with a plan. I don't know how I thought I was going to get away with it, but I just said to myself, if I tell them that the internship is over, I have to leave. If I don't tell them, I get to stay. So I never told them that the internship was over, and I kept coming in day after day, week after week. basically working for free and not getting college credit for it. And I'm 15 weeks into the 10-week internship when I finally got busted. So all the other interns had gone back to their colleges and universities, and I was still there. I was the only intern left, and I think maybe the news director thought I was going to a different college or something. He didn't quite think out, why is Jeff Crilley still here and there are no other interns? So he's walking down the hall with a cup of coffee, and he passes by me, and he's kind of a Lou Grant, Mary Tyler Moore, gruff news director type. And he says, Crilley, this is an awfully long internship. When is this thing over? And I kind of whispered under my breath, it was over 5 weeks ago. And he kind of stopped in his tracks, and he turned around and he walked closer to me, and he said, say that again? I said, it was over 5 weeks ago. And he looked totally confused. He says, come into my office. And so he sat me down. He says, so let me get this straight. We're not paying you anything. I said, that's right. He says, and you're not getting any college credit at this point if this thing was over 5 weeks ago. I said, that's right. He says, what the heck are you doing here? And this is that scene in your life where they either call security and have me ushered out because I was driving the company cars, and I'm sure I wasn't on their insurance or the university's insurance. I was basically trespassing for 5 weeks. And so I just reached down into my gut and I looked him in the eye and I said, please don't make me leave. I mean, this is the air that I breathe. News is what, I have for breakfast in the morning. Please don't make me leave. This is my life. And I think he saw a determination and a hunger he had never seen before. And so he said, Jeff, we don't have a job for you, but we're going to make a job for you. I don't know what we're going to call you, executive lackey, newsroom assistant. I don't know what we're going to call you. And we don't have much money. I'll pay you minimum wage. Will that work? And I hugged him because I mean, gosh, now I don't have to clean toilets anymore. I can actually just get paid minimum wage for doing news stuff. And so as I'm going about my life doing news stuff, in addition to my college classes, one day I came in and the news director was in a bad mood and he's kind of cursing under his breath. And I said, hey, what's wrong? He says, 3 of our reporters called in sick, and we had a reporting team of 5. So when 3 call in sick, that's a bad thing. And because I had been doing everything that a reporter does, only I wasn't on camera, I knew the plays. And so I kind of waved and I said, put me in, coach. I know the plays. And he grumbled under his breath, Lou Grant style, no, Crilley, there's no way you're going on air. And so he would go into his office and he'd call another reporter that called in sick and says, how sick are you really? We've got nobody here but Crilley. So, and he would poke his head out of the door and I'd be waving at him. He says, no, Crilley, it's not happening. And he'd go back and he'd call another reporter and he'd say, you better be dead or otherwise come in because we've got nobody here but Crilley. And so he did this for about 15, 20 minutes. And finally he came out with a tape. It was a 3/4 inch tape, the old style that they used to use in newsrooms. And he handed me the tape. And with great bravado, he said, don't suck. And with that encouragement, I went out and I put together a piece. And it was about 15 minutes before the 6 o'clock news. And he said, let me look at the piece before I actually air this thing. And so I showed it to him and he looked at me and he says, it doesn't suck. And it made the air. And the next thing you know, I was being promoted from newsroom lackey to part-time reporter and then full-time reporter. And then finally I became the weekend anchor. So I was a college student, 20 years old, wasn't even legal to drink with the other anchors that would go out after the newscast to drink. I had to have iced tea. But I was a boy anchor in Lansing, Michigan, at the CBS station. And the reason I say that is because a weekend anchor at the CBS station gets to have his face on TV during 60 Minutes, which was the #1 show in the nation. So during 60 Minutes in Lansing, Michigan, you would see this little chubby-faced anchor boy pop on the screen and say, murder in Lansing, details at 11, and that was me. So pretty soon the college professors and even some of the students began to say, did I see you on the news? Are you like an anchor man? I got to tell you a funny story, because this has some roots in public relations, which is what I do now. I was a weekend anchor for a while, and I thought to myself that the college newspaper needs to do a story on me. I mean, this is a big deal. I'm a college student. I'm a weekend anchor, and they didn't discover me, so I had to discover myself. And so I called the newspaper as if I was somebody else. And I said, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but I got a news tip for you. Oh yeah, what's that? I go to class with this guy, Crilley. I don't know exactly how you say his name, but I think he's an anchor on the local news station. You guys should do a story about that. And the next thing you know, I got a call from the college paper saying, hey, we got a news tip that you're an anchor and we'd like to do a story on you. And I think that's funny that I did that, while in college, because I guess at heart, I was always a PR guy. So I start climbing up the markets, and I get to Omaha, Nebraska. And in Omaha, Nebraska, I went against the most feared reporter in all of Nebraska. His name is Mike McKnight. In fact, Derek, if you would, just so they can get a visual, Mike McKnight, can you just go out to YouTube and pull up Mike McKnight and put it on the screen, because he's still there. It's Channel 6 in Omaha, Mike McKnight. So when I got to Omaha, Mike McKnight had been reporting for 10 years, and he notoriously was friends with all the cops, and there were stories about him out at a bachelor party with cops, and then all of their phones go off, and he's, covering a double murder in the middle of the night and basically beating everybody in town. Did you find it, Derek? Okay, so while he's looking for that, I'll just continue this story. So I was good by Lansing, Michigan standards, but in Omaha, I actually had to learn how to report, because when you go against somebody as good as Mike McKnight, every day was like, I lived in fear of the 6 o'clock news, because that was when the phone was going to go off in the little Lincoln, Nebraska bureau, and the little red phone was the bat phone. That means it's a call from Omaha, and they would be asking me why Mike McKnight beat me once again on another story. Derek, are you having any trouble? It's McKnight. Okay, McKnight with a K, yeah. Anyway, he's still there, believe it or not. I corresponded with him not too long ago. So he's been in Nebraska for 40 years, and he absolutely knows everything and where all the skeletons are buried. So they would call me up and say, Crilley, he beat you again. And this was day after day, month after month. And every time I would get beat by mighty Mike McKnight, I was recording his newscast so I could see who he talked to get the story. And then I would call that person the next day and I'd say, hey, you don't know me from Adam. My name is Jeff Crilley from Channel 3. Clearly, you know Mike McKnight. There he is. There's a picture of Mike McKnight. He's still there. Anyway, I said, you clearly know Mike McKnight because you did an interview with him last night. Can I ask you how Mike got that story from you? Oh, yeah. Well, Mike calls 2 or 3 times a week just to check in. And I would say, well, is it okay if I call 4 or 5 times a week? And so after a while, you start to learn where, Mike McKnight had hidden all his acorns. And I started to beat Mike McKnight on his own turf after about a year of doing this. And he taught me how to win by losing. I mean, and there's a lesson in there. I mean, it is not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. And I used to live in constant panic that I was getting scooped on something. I would carry quarters to the movie theater with my wife so I could go to a payphone and plunk quarters in and call the local police department, sheriff's department, and state patrol during the movie, halfway through the movie, just so I knew that I wasn't getting scooped on anything. We had a scanner at home. My wife and I always used to fight over whether or not the scanner could be playing overnight. So I was absolutely obsessed with beating Mike McKnight. And when I finally beat Mike McKnight, I knew it was time to move on to other markets, and then clawed my way up to Minneapolis, which was market 13, going from market 70. It was a big jump, But the thing about Minnesota, Minneapolis, is it's really, really cold. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, and Detroit was cold. You know, you would have freezing temperatures in Detroit, but in Minnesota, you would wake up and the weatherman would be saying, we're expecting a high today of 16 degrees below zero. And I'd say, really? It's not even going to crack zero? And so finally, I said, there's more to life than waiting for springtime. I've got to get out of here. And so at that point, my daughter was born, and I started to reevaluate what I wanted to do with my life. My path had always been, I'm going to be the next Dan Rather. I'm going to go straight to CBS News, and I'm going to take over for Dan Rather. But then you have kids, and like all of us, you know, your priorities change. And I started to think, I don't know that I want to live in New York and raise a family. Maybe I need to stay local. And if I stayed local, it would have to be warm weather. And I'm in the 13th largest market, so it's got to be the top 10. And so I started to look at the markets. And so you have LA, which is warm but very expensive. And then you have San Francisco, warm but very expensive. And then there's Dallas. Dallas at the time was market number 8. We are now market number 5 because there's wide open spaces. All of the markets larger than us, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, they're kind of locked in by water. And we've got nothing but wide open spaces. We can go all the way up to Oklahoma if we want. So, I became fixated on getting to Dallas. And the history is my grandmother lived in Ennis, and every summer as a boy, the 3 boys and the dog would pile into the station wagon, and we would make the 2,000-mile journey from Detroit to Ennis, Texas, to go see grandma for 2 weeks. And little Mayberry RFD, Ennis probably had a population of about 8,000 at the time. And it was fun for a little boy who grew up in Detroit. Detroit's a very dangerous town, as you all know. I used to pay for my little comic books and candies through bulletproof glass in Detroit, and to come to Ennis, Texas, where I could just roam the streets like Opie and Andy Griffin. It was heaven to me. And so as I started to think about where I wanted to raise my family, I thought, this is perfect. I could raise my family in Ennis, and I could work in Dallas, just 35 minutes up the road. So I became obsessed with getting a job in Dallas. And when you narrow your job search to just 3 people, it was ABC, NBC, CBS. Fox had not come along yet. You now are somewhat limited. And so I had only 3 people in my life that I had to convince I was the best job candidate ever. The news director at Channel 4, the news director at Channel 5, and the news director at Channel 8. And so I would fly down. I'd use all my vacation time. I'd fly down with the family for 2 weeks, twice a year, to do job interviews. And I considered it a failure if I couldn't get the hat trick. The hat trick is get an interview at all 3 stations. And so what I would do every morning of my vacation is I would call up the news director's secretary, and I would say, hey, Christy, Jeff Crilley from Minneapolis, how are you doing? Yeah, I know I called yesterday. What does Mike's schedule look like today? Does he have any time to see me? I mean, I promise I won't take much time. I could show up with a donut and coffee in the lobby, and I could just shake his hand and hand him my tape. Any chance of me seeing Mike today? Just for 3 minutes in the lobby? No, Jeff, hey, I feel you, man. I know what it's like to want something so bad, but Mike doesn't have any time for you. Call back tomorrow. And I would do this, all 2 weeks was spent bluffing my way into a job interview, even if they weren't looking for a new reporter. Well, I remember one trip, I had seen the news director at Channel 4. I had seen the news director at Channel 5. No, I'm sorry. I had seen the news director at 4. I had seen the news director at 8, but I hadn't seen the news director at 5 yet. And I considered it a failure of a vacation if I couldn't get all 3. So to give you some context for this, along the way, I started to go to the Dallas Public Library to look up the history of the stations. This is pre-internet, right? So this is like 1990, right about 1990, 1991. And I remember photocopying everything ever written about each one of the stations. So I had a file about this thick of each one of the stations. And then I would show up at the job interview with the file. And I'd say, the reason I want to work for Fox 4 is because you guys were the first ones with the helicopter. Did you know you're the first ones with the live truck? And I would tell each of them exactly what they wanted to hear. But in the file that I was studying for Channel 8, and I studied it like it was a final exam, like I knew more about the station than the news director did. In the file on Channel 8, it had a thing in there about Dale Hansen getting a Peabody Award for the SMU player scandal, the death penalty story. And they named his producer, John Sparks was the name of the producer. So back to the Channel 5 story. I'd seen the news director from Channel 4. I'd seen the news director from Channel 8. I hadn't gotten in to see the news director from Channel 5. And the secretary told me that Mike, it was another Mike was his name. He doesn't have time to see you. Sorry that it didn't work out this trip. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, wait a minute. My plane doesn't leave till 5. I've got nothing else to do. I've seen everything I want to see in Dallas. I'll just go camp out in the lobby of Channel 5. And so it was super, super aggressive. But I showed up in the lobby of Channel 5 at about 10 in the morning after I had been told, don't come, he won't see you today. And I announced to the receptionist as politely as I could. I didn't want her to feel threatened by me, but I politely explained that Mike was very busy and couldn't see me today. But my plane doesn't leave till 5. And I've got this big, thick book with me. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to just sit there on the couch and read my book. And if Mike happens to be going out for lunch or something like that, would you do me the courtesy of pointing to him so I know what he looks like? I've never seen him before. And then I'll just come over here and shake his hand and give him my tape. Which is super, super aggressive, guys. You know what I'm talking about? I had no invitation to be in their lobby, but I think the receptionist felt sorry for me, probably didn't want me cluttering up her lobby all day. And so she sends the message back to Mike that this crazy reporter from Minneapolis is here to see him. And so I get ushered into Mike's office, and Mike looks me in the eye and says, Jeff, dude, I understand your persistence and your dogged determination to see me. I know what it's like to want something as bad as you want this. I honestly don't have time to talk to you today, but let me introduce you to my number 2 guy. John, come over here. Jeff, this is John Sparks. And I said, John Sparks, not the same guy who won the Peabody Award for the SMU player scandal. That John Sparks? And he smiled real big and he says, why, yes, I am, son. Come with me. And so we went into his office and we spent, I still consider it the best job interview I ever did, because we spent 45 minutes talking about him and the last 5 talking about me. And I think I'll pause because there's a pearl of wisdom there. Great job interviews are not about you. Everybody thinks that they have to go into the job interview and impress the person with how many awards they have and everything they've done in their life. That's boring. You want to impress them with themselves. And so if you do homework on the person you're interviewing with, you can keep them talking about themselves long enough that they start to check some boxes. Does his homework, ask good questions, seems knowledgeable, seems interested in me, wouldn't mind seeing him every day. You follow me? And then if you can get them to check all of those know, like, trust boxes that make people buy stuff, the last box is this person qualified? And when they look at your resume and you're qualified, they've already checked all those other important boxes. So spent 45 minutes talking about him, about how he won the Peabody Award for the SMU player scandal. And I don't think he had a chance to brag about this in a long, long time. Because I remember one of my last questions to him before leaving was, man, I would give anything to see the face of the athletic director when you guys sprung it on him that you had proof that they were paying players. And he says, well, if you have just a couple more minutes, I happen to have the tape right here, which he clearly wanted to show this to an adoring fan. And so we watched the story, and I complimented him on the writing and how he was really responsible, not Dale Hansen, for that triumph. Anyway, I still consider that the best interview I ever did, because by the time I got back to Minneapolis, 3 of my references had called me and said, hey, I think you're going to get this job at Channel 5 because we got a phone call from your news director, John Sparks, and he really likes you. And so you're probably going to get a job at Channel 5. Turns out Channel 4 hired me first. And I later asked the news director, I said, when did you know that you were going to hire me? He says, I actually knew about six to 8 months ago. I was like, you did? Why didn't you tell me? And he says, no, I had kind of checked that box in my mind, and we knew we were going to hire you. One of the reasons they knew they were going to hire me is I did something fairly outrageous, and this is when home camcorders were just coming out. I started sending videotapes from Minnesota to Dallas. And so a typical resume tape is you show a breaking news story, and then you get softer and you end with a light feature story. But I decided to bookend my resume tape with a personal message from Minneapolis. And I remember one time it was Halloween day, and we got 2 feet of snow in Minneapolis. And I thought, man, this is a great opportunity to do a videotape for the 3 news directors. So I would get my wife and my little daughter, Sarah, out on the front lawn in 2 feet of snow, and I would address the news director personally. I'd say, hey, Mike, Jeff Crilley from Minneapolis. My wife, Susan's running the camcorder. My little daughter, Sarah, is there frolicking in the snow. Can you believe this? This is Halloween day. This is no way to raise a family. We're going to be trick-or-treating in 2 feet of snow today in Minnesota. Please rescue me. Here's my latest work. And we'd go into a videotape of, my highlight reel, and we'd end with me looking at the camera again saying, Mike, I'm going to keep sending you these resume tapes month after month, year after year, until you either get a restraining order against me or you break down and you hire me. I'll see you next month. And I remember the next month it was, 17 degrees below zero. And so I grabbed my wife and a camcorder and I'd say, hey, Mike, this is going to be really short. You can see from the bank marquee sign over there that it's 17 degrees below zero. This is insane. This is no way to live life. Please hire me. Here's my latest work. Anyway, the news director from Dallas at Channel 4 said it was really your resume tapes and the fact that you would exploit your family to get a job. He jokes that I had my daughter kneeling down in the snow saying, please hire my daddy. She never said that, but that's the legend now. Okay, which brings me to my book and my speaking career and how I was able to leave my job at Fox 4. So I wrote this book. It's called Free Publicity, A TV Reporter Shares the Secrets for Getting Covered on the News. And it's just a little how-to book, how to get yourself on the news. And my station said, you're not allowed to accept speakers' fees, speak for free. So I started this blistering pace of 300 speeches a year for 6 straight years, in addition to my TV job. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Fox 4. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to work at Fox 4. Excuse me. I sold 70,000 copies of this book. 70,000 copies. I was making as much on my side hustle, speaking and selling books, as I was at Channel 4. And finally, the business was born because if you're selling that many books, you get a lot of people saying, Crilley, if you ever start a PR firm, I want to be your very first client. And I'd say, no, I'll just give you free advice. And so I was giving free advice, and people were calling me up saying, hey, I'm going to be on the front page of the Dallas Morning News. That's genius. You're really a PR genius. And I kept hearing this over and over again until finally I was 45 years old. And I didn't want to be that old guy standing on the side of the road telling you that it's icy in Dallas, slow down. If I was still on the streets of Dallas, I would be doing COVID-19 day, 80, and it would be mind numbing. But hey, thank you, Derek. So I got my wife's permission to quit. And in May of 2008, I quit to start, quote, the country's first all journalist PR firm. I was a journalist. and it was a one-man company. And so I wasn't lying. It was an all-journalist PR firm. I just happened to be the only person in the company. And so a laptop, a cell phone, working out of my house, no overhead, I'm getting people on the news. And my very first client, I'm going to have Derek just roll a little bit of my very first client. His name is Clint David.
Clint David, managing partner for David Goodman and the Dole.
But Dallas attorney Clint David says there's nothing to stop you from trying.
Trial watcher attorney Clint David says defense attorneys did show some of the government's case.
Clint David has been watching the trial.
Attorney Clint David says given the
Okay, Derek, you can pot it down and just keep the video playing. So all I was doing every single day was I was a bird dog for Clint David. I was looking at the news. I was seeing what the news was covering. And I'd say, wow, here's a legal story. And I'd call up Clint and I'd say, hey, Clint, do you want to talk about school prayer today? I don't know anything about it, but if you send me 2 articles, I'll be an expert. I said, cool. So I'd send him 2 articles and he'd call me up and he'd say, piece of cake. Yeah, go ahead and put me on the news. And then I'd call up a TV station or radio station or newspaper and I'd say, hey, I've got your guy. It's Clint David. They'd say, we love Clint, the guy with the good hair. Yeah, we love Clint. Yeah, put him through. And at the end of the first year, Clint calls me up and he says, I've got good news and bad news. I said, well, give me the good news first. He says, dude, you got me 500 media placements in the first year. It probably could have been 700, but I had a firm to run. I said, then what's the bad news? He says, dude, I don't need you anymore. They kind of call direct. And instead of feeling bad for myself, I'm a pleaser. I'm a middle child. My father's a minister. Praise is my love language. That was the highest compliment I had ever heard. That a PR firm did such a good job that they worked themselves out of a job. And so that day I decided that is going to be my standard operating procedure. Don't just be stingy with the publicity, rein it down. Just give them more publicity than they could ever imagine, because if it shows up on their Facebook feed and LinkedIn feed and all their friends are seeing them on the news, the next thing you know, the friends are going to say, hey, Clint, I keep seeing you on the news every time I turn around. How are you doing this? Oh, well, you need to talk to my PR guy. So from day one, we've really dedicated ourselves to not just get you on the news once or twice. We have clients that average 30 placements in 30 days, 30 media appearances in 30 days. In fact, we have a gentleman who's about to do some work with us. He's not even a client yet. I decided to put him out to the media yesterday, and just a free sample, like Baskin-Robbins will sometimes give you a free scoop. I put him out to the media, and he's done 8 interviews in the last 24 hours. And he's kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, you can really do what you say you can do. I'll show you how I do that. Hey, Derek, can you pull up my daily email? Do you have it? Do you get it? The rundown? So I put out an email. So you're starting to see a pattern. It doesn't matter whether I was working in TV news or PR. I'm a tireless worker. So every day I wake up at between 3 and 4 in the morning to begin my day. Why? Because I'm putting out an email that goes out to now 30,000 journalists across the country. That's print, radio, television, from the smallest newspaper all the way up to the New York Times and Good Morning America. And so by not missing a single day in 11 years, not Christmas Day, not New Year's Day, I've become a voice in the world of journalism. Derek, any luck? So this morning I got up at 3, and I've got, ABC overnight news or Fox or CNN playing in the background, and I'm just kind of seeing what stories that the media is talking about today and how I might be able to play into that narrative. And I basically opt in reporters without their permission, which is technically spam. Can you zoom in a little bit on that, Derek, or does it let you do that? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so if you start to scroll down it, you'll see it's a nicely put together little newsletter that goes over what are some of the stories that are being covered in the news today. And so I'm giving you story ideas, and then I'm giving you an expert that you could use to interview for that story. So the gold here is right there. If you'll pause for a second, Derek, you'll see on the screen, I'm putting the email and cell phone of the expert on in the journalist's hands. Journalists truly don't like PR people. They see the PR people as an unnecessary middleman. So I'm essentially saying to the journalist, hey, I used to be you, man. I know what you're going through. You don't need to talk to Jeff Crilley. You just want to talk to my expert. So here's my expert. And thanks to the pandemic, journalists are really used to doing Zoom calls now and Skype interviews now. So my daily emails have become more effective than they've ever been before. And that's how the company has grown, steadily for the last 11 years. May, we celebrated 11 years. But the most exciting innovation of the company happened about 3 years ago. We got into podcasting. And before I show you all our fabulous studios, I got to tell you how we started. So my daughter, who is now 30, came to me. She's my vice president. That little girl who was frolicking in the snow is now my vice president. And she came to me 3 years ago and she said, hey, Daddy, I think we need to get into podcasting. And I laughed at her. I said, podcasting? Who listens to podcasts? She says, my generation. All those kids running on the Katy Trail with earbuds, they're not listening to music, Dad. They're listening to podcasts. So I gave her my credit card and I said, don't go crazy. Let's build a little podcast studio. And so she went out and they, bought some mics and little GoPros and a board. And, $2,000 later, we had a little teeny podcast studio. And we were in another tower in Lincoln Center here at LBJ in the Tollway. And as I was giving tours, I would say, hey, we can get you on Fox, we can get you on CNN. And they'd say, hey, do you have a radio studio? I'd say, yeah, we've got a radio studio. I can get you on Fox, I can get you on CNN. They'd say, no, let me see your little radio studio. That looks cool. So we'd sit down and I trained our podcasting team on how to do the puppy dog close. The puppy dog close, as you know, is famously little girl comes into the pet store with the dad and the clerk gives her a puppy dog to hold. Well, she looks up at Daddy and she says, please, Daddy, can I have this puppy dog? So the puppy dog close in podcasting is allowing the person to hear their show open before they actually sign up. So we would put headphones on people and we'd say, okay, if you did have a show, what would it sound like? Would it be classic rock? Would it be easy listening? What would the show be called? And then I'd have, my podcast team come up with a quickie little show open and say, now you're listening to the Joe Blow Show, and here now is Joe Blow. And I could see them really getting into it. Anyway, as this division started to grow, I said, I think this whole podcast thing is more glittery and more shiny than even getting on the news. And I'm not going to stop getting people on the news, but what if I started to put some money into this division? And so, Derek, if you'll run the videotape, you don't have to play it up full. It's just an audio bed. But I now have spent $300,000 on studios. Our studios are nicer than Channel 8 or Channel 4. The first studio you're going to see is we call it the newsroom. That anchor desk cost me $8,000. And the reason I tell you that is because in order to sit behind something that nice, you have to go to Channel 8 and they don't let you use their stuff. That room we call Oprah, and that room can fit up to 50 people. And I love the view. So if you can imagine, we're at Lincoln Center, which is LBJ. Oh, that's Ted Nugent, by the way. And his wife is now a host of one of our shows. So I get to see Ted Nugent once a month. He comes in with his wife and knocks out 4 shows. That studio is the one I'm sitting in right now. All of the views, all of the studios have a view of traffic, LBJ. And so we're in Lincoln Center, which is just on the southeast corner of LBJ and the Tollway. On the north side is the Galleria. But I love my studios. We have now grown, get this, we've grown to 92 different shows a month. Those aren't episodes. Those are 92 completely different clients who are hosting shows. I'm sitting in one of our studios, and the other 3 that are up on this floor are being used right now. And we're about to spend another $200,000. We're building even more fabulous studios right next to the food court at Lincoln Center, where some 500 people come to eat. So it's kind of like the Today Show, where we're advertising to the building all of the time, because anybody in these towers can afford us. And so for the first time in my adult life, we get walk-ins. People will come in and say, "Hey, I work in Tower 3. I keep walking by your TV studios. What is this about? How does this work?" But you're seeing a 56-year-old man who feels like a kid again, because I wake up every day with the same prayer: happy clients, happy employees. The company is doing so well now that we don't need people's money. And I'm not saying that in an arrogant way. I'm saying in year 1, when I was just starting out, I would sometimes work for people who were not kind to me. They were not nice people, but I had to get their money. And now that we've had so much success, I can be actually very, very choosy. What I typically do, I'll invite people on my Jeff Crilley show, which I do as many as 3 or 4 of them a day, little 10-minute interviews. If you're curious, go to YouTube and just put in Jeff Crilley show, and you'll see that I'm very,
What am I in bed, you
very
guys?
busy on LinkedIn and YouTube doing these shows. The reason I do the show is twofold. It's a great way to build business. If I meet somebody at a cocktail party and I say, "Hey, do you need a marketing company?" They're going to say, "Dude, I just met you. That's a little aggressive. I don't need life insurance. I don't need marketing." But if I say, "Oh my goodness, you're a lawyer. That's fascinating. Why don't you come on my show sometime? My show is called the Jeff Crilley Show. Come on my show. We'll talk about you." They come in here under lights and cameras talking about their favorite subject. We have access to LinkedIn Live, and I have now 10,000 fans on LinkedIn Live. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but every time somebody's about to go live on LinkedIn Live, they notify all of your fans. So people are getting this little buzz: Jeff Crilley's about to go live, even if they're not watching the episodes. I'm creating all of this noise for myself. And now I'm getting people saying, "Man, every time I turn around, I'm hearing something about you. Either you host this show or you do a show with a friend of mine, or a friend of mine was on your show, or you just put a friend of mine on TV." What I'm doing is I'm just creating all of this noise out there. And the thing I discovered about Dallas-Fort Worth is it's a big place, but it's a small place. You can actually make a lot of noise if you're busy and you're out there circulating. One of my favorite expressions is you got to circulate to percolate. So don't do your job search, your entire job search behind a computer. You got to bluff your way into some face-to-faces. And I know with the pandemic, I know what you're saying. It's hard to get a face-to-face, and I understand that. I would just say be aggressive, be creative, be innovative, send them something to stand out. I'll tell a quick story about how my wife landed a job with a pizza. So Derek, are you laughing? So my wife took a job in Wichita Falls, and this is you're gonna think I'm absolutely crazy, but I fell in love with my wife, and I had to live in Wichita Falls and work in Dallas. We were actually boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. So I spent 5 hours a day in a car. 5 hours a day in a car. It's 2.5 hours each way to Wichita Falls. And I was the morning reporter, which means I had to leave Wichita Falls by about 2:30 in the morning in order to get to Dallas by 5-ish to get ready for a 6 o'clock live shot. But at the time, I'm 11 years older than my wife. She was, 20, she was 22, 23. I was 33. She wanted to party every night. She wanted to go out and have dinner, and I'm tired, man. So I would get to bed. I remember going to bed during the 10 o'clock news with my eyes just fading. And then 4 hours later, I had to get up and do it all over again and drive to Dallas to do this. I mean, imagine spending 5 hours a day in a car. It was brutal. And I did that for 11 months. And so as I was slowly losing my mind from sleep deprivation, we decided we had to get Victoria a job in Dallas. And Wichita Falls is market 130. Dallas at the time when she moved here was probably market 7. And I came across this book. It's called 303 Offbeat Ways to Get a Job. And one of the techniques was take a pizza, plain cheese, $8 cheese pizza, take your resume, flip it upside down, put it on top of the pizza box, and then write in big, bold letters, hire me, I always deliver. I know this is a cheesy way, underline cheesy, so they get the pun. I know this is, I'm entertaining Derek. Derek's listening. And so I would, this is a cheesy way to get your attention, but I would do anything for a job interview at CW33. We were targeting CW33 because they just started their newsroom. So at this point, I'd been on TV in Dallas for like five or 6 years, and I was just praying not to be recognized, because if I was delivering a pizza during the lunch hour to Channel 33, whoever I'm talking to is probably thinking to themselves, man, times must be hard at Channel 4 when the reporters are having to make extra income delivering pizzas. But fortunately for me, nobody recognized me. I delivered this pizza with this note, hire me, I always deliver. I know this is a cheesy way to get your attention. I would do anything for a job interview at Channel 33. Here's my cell phone. I deliver the pizza. 5 minutes later, my now wife, then girlfriend, got a call from the news director at Channel 33, and this is exactly what he said. He says, okay, pizza girl, you got my attention. If you're available tomorrow, I'd love to interview you in Dallas. And so she took the day off, drove to Dallas, got the job at Channel 33. And now, I mean, I have a wonderful life. My wife was in TV and radio for 10 years. She left right about the time I'm leaving the TV station. She's leaving her TV station to go to work as the head of marketing for North Park Mall. And then after she did that for about 5 years, she started the marketing for Legacy West when it was just dirt. So she went from 50-year-old institution to dirt. But as all of you know, I mean, for a few years there, Legacy West was kind of the hottest thing going in Dallas-Fort Worth because it was so new. And then right about the time that they had built out all of those shops at Legacy West, she got a dream opportunity to become the head of marketing for Highland Park Village. In fact, I've got a cute story related to that, if I can. Jeff, how are we doing on time? Are we good? So my wife, when she was at Channel 33, did a feature story on a guy named Joey who works at the spa and salon at Highland Park Village. It was called Frederick Fakai, and now they have a new name. She did a story on Joey years ago. And every time she would go get her hair done or get her nails done, Joey would say something to her about how wonderful that piece was. And so a couple years ago in like November, she's getting her hair done. Her hair is in foils, right? Imagine her hair in foils. And Joey says, hey, I'm about to get you a job. She says, get me a job? He says, yep, I'm going to introduce you to Heather Washburn. And so for those of you who don't know, Heather and Ray Washburn own Highland Park Village with, I think, her brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And my wife says, no, please, Joey, don't. I've got my hair in foils. He says, it's okay. Heather's got her hair in foils too. So he grabs her by the hand, takes her across the salon and says, Heather, you need to hire Victoria Snee. She's the one who did marketing for North Park and their 50th anniversary. She's the one who put Legacy West on the map, building it, promoting it from dirt, all of those restaurant openings, all of those store openings. She made that happen. And we're not on the news near enough. Heather, you need to hire Victoria Snee. And the two ladies kind of laughed that they have their hair in curls, hair in foil. And Heather knew of my wife and said, you have a great reputation, Victoria. We would love to talk to you about a position. Here's my card. So there's a lesson in there too. The lesson in there is just, you never know who is going to make the break. It was her manicurist who got her the job at Highland Park Village. And to me, when I heard that had happened, I said, man, It's that old saying, be nice to everybody. Be nice to everybody. It could be the shoe shine guy who gets you the job. So be nice to everybody. All right, I'd love to take a question or two if anybody has one.
If you've got a question for Jeff, just go ahead and unmute your mic and you can ask it, or if you want to put it in the comment box or in the chat, I'll read it to him. Questions? I'm glad you told the pizza story. I always love that story.
Thank you.
I have a question. I was wondering, with your platform of the Jeff Crilley Show, if you're gonna maybe interview certain people's job related and maybe helping to change that paradigm a little bit, as far as, I guess a lot of people work very hard from the employee standpoint, but I was wondering if employers can be a little more helpful.
Yeah. Well, I do have an idea for everybody on this call. If you guys don't have a podcast, and you don't have to do it with me, you guys should have a podcast, even if you're doing it out of your house. Why a podcast? Because it gives you a chance to meet people. People love to talk about themselves. So if you had a show, I'm making this up, but if you launched a podcast called Success, well, who doesn't want to be on that show? It's implied that if you're on the show, that you're a success. And who do you invite on that show? People that you later want to hire you. It's a different LinkedIn request than will you look at my resume. It's a, hey, I've been following your career. I have this show called Success. Would you please do me the honor of coming into my show? You could zoom in to the show and do a video podcast. I think that software is free. If you go out to YouTube and just put in video podcast, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of people who are interviewing people side by side from their home. And then after the show is over, you get on the phone with the person that you just interviewed and say, hey, that you were an amazing guest. Thank you so much for sharing your success story with my viewers. Hey, I want to ask a favor. Oh, sure. What's that? So I am looking for new opportunities, and I've really been impressed with what you told me about your company. Who at your company would I need to talk to about a possible job interview? Well, if you did your selection right, you just interviewed the person that you would need to talk to. Do you follow me? You kind of bluffed your way into an interview. It's the way I'm using my show right now to meet new prospects. That's why I'm up to as many as 3 or 4 Jeff Crilley shows a day. They come in, I meet them, I talk to them, and then later we do business together. It's a beautiful way to get to meet anybody you want to get to meet. And I've been a guest on countless podcasts where they're zooming me in from their home. So although I'm not technical, I believe all of this information is out there. In fact, if you went to YouTube and said, YouTube, how to set up your own video podcast from home, I'm sure there's tutorials out there. And I don't think any of this stuff costs anything. Even, this mic here probably costs less than $100, and this is a really professional studio mic. The lights that you're seeing right here, these lights, the prices come down. They're LED lights. You can use a little ring light to light yourself. Some of you probably are being lit by a ring light right now. These lights only cost about $100, $150 per light. The cost of the equipment has come way, way, way down. And the delivery system is free. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, right? And so I love the idea of becoming a broadcaster to further your goals, meeting anybody you want to meet. Any other questions?
Hey, Jeff, this is Susan Straub here. I just had a comment to kind of go along with some of the things you were talking about standing out. First of all, as a fellow writer, I love your storytelling style. I have been laughing to myself in my home for the past hour. But many, many years ago, I was making the move from a sales career, which I really hated, to trying to break into marketing and communications. And to your point of really standing out, this one job I was applying for, I was not the most qualified person for it. I was making a big leap from working for a real estate agent to working for this corporation as a marketer. So I went in for the interview, and this was before internet and before all that also. So I went back the first day and delivered a handwritten note. Then I went back the second day, and I can't remember what I delivered, but I delivered something else about what we were talking about. And then over that 48-hour period, I put together an entire newsletter from scratch. We had been talking about it in my company about with my former boss about maybe putting a newsletter together and what would it look like. I put it together using whatever publishing program I had. We didn't have a color printer, so I printed up black ink transparencies so I could take it to Kinko's to do a 2-color copy. This is how long ago it was. And I delivered that on the third day.
Wow.
My boss told me a while later that I stole that job from a more qualified candidate because I showed that I wanted it so bad that I was going to stretch out and do that. So I really stood out to him. So like with the pizza story, you have to really get their attention. And it turned out to be a really great move for me because it launched into my marketing career. So thank you for all your stories. I mean, they were great.
No, thank you. You're very kind. And I during the .com bust, I did a story for Channel 4 on how to get a job. And I interviewed a recruiter. And I still remember the advice that he gave, and it's probably as relevant today as it was then. He said, I would tell everybody watching this broadcast right now to go rent Working Girl with Melanie Griffith and Wall Street with Charlie Sheen. And you're not watching necessarily for the plot, you're watching for the hunger. If you remember Charlie Sheen, how he got to Gordon Gekko, he's, flattering the secretary with flowers and finally gets the meeting with Gordon Gekko. And then Working Girl, if you remember the plot, she found a little opportunity, and the next thing you know, she's running the company. And he said there's a hunger that is featured in those movies that a job applicant needs to harness in order to stand out and communicate to the employer, nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody's going to out hustle me. I know you may have employees who like to complain. I'm going to be a thank God it's Monday employee who can't wait to get to work on Monday. I'll run circles around anybody else who's applying for this job. This is a time to, I think, take everything you're doing to the next level. And the pizza thing works with any company that's not too buttoned down. If it was a very conservative law firm, that would probably turn them off. But anything that values creativity, I think you can't be too corny. I mean, that same 303 offbeat ways to get a job, one of them was send cookies, your one smart cookie. I mean, they're corny, but who doesn't like cookies? Another one was, go to Walmart, get a pair of shoes, take one shoe out of the box, and then you put a box with the resume saying, just trying to get a foot in the door. I mean, there's thousands of these ideas, but they're just a way to stand out. In fact, I can't turn this part of my brain off, which is the publicity side. You could hire one of those planes that have banners, and they're not that expensive. I bet if you Googled right now how much it would cost to have a plane carry a banner, you could probably get this thing done for $1,000. But the value is you're going to call up the news media, and you're going to say, I've hired one of the planes dragging a banner, and the banner says, hire Wendy 214, and we're going to keep circling this building, Exxon. I'm making this up, but you know what I mean? The media would go crazy. They'd do a story on Wendy, who wants a job at Exxon so bad she hired a plane to drag a banner around, and now Exxon looks like a schmuck if they don't at least get you a job interview, and they'll probably hire you. And that's $1,000. I mean, don't everybody get a plane at the same time, but that that idea will get somebody a job.
Hey, Jeff, Mike Warner here.
Yes, how are you?
Good. I've seen you speak so many times, and I recognize all your stories.
Thank you.
While you were speaking this morning, I was about to turn it off and go do chores. And like the lady said earlier, the way you tell your stories is...
Thank you.
I sat here and laughed again. So thank you for the way you present. You could probably speak for hours and would all still stick around. But also I want to thank you for all your work with Success North Dallas and other organizations you're involved with. You truly are a person who gives back tremendously over and over again. I've had an opportunity to speak with you after Jeff's meeting on several occasions, and you're always very accommodating and have good ideas to share. So thanks for all that.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a ton. And Jeff, I have to bow out because I have a Jeff Crilley show at 11.
I actually went
but
back
listen,
and
you guys
looked.
have all been wonderful, and thank you so much, Jeff. I hope you'll keep inviting me back.
Great. Well, thank you. I actually went back and looked. The first time we had you was April 16th, 2010. So this, I guess, is your 11th appearance with us. So thank you.
That's so awesome. That's awesome. Well, you do such a great job, and this is a wonderful group. Thank you so much. God bless everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for your time. Let's see here. If you're not receiving emails from the North Dallas Plano Focus Group, please be sure to enter your information in the chat box so that I can get you added to the list, especially for anybody who's brand new. Next week, we'll do open forum, and we're going to do a little 15-minute presentation on how to use Google Voice. That came up a couple weeks ago, and so Kelly McLean is going to do that presentation and tell us how she started using it. It's a great way to sort of protect yourself so you're not giving out your cell phone number. So that'll be next Friday. And then also join us this coming week, next Tuesday, 1 o'clock LinkedIn Tuesdays will be with Terry Sullivan on Wednesday, July 1st. Interviewing Wednesdays, how to prepare for an interview when you have limited time, dealing with difficult interviewers and their difficult questions, and dealing with that voice in your head. And then next Thursday, we'll do effective resumes as we do every Thursday at 1 o'clock. All these sessions have been recorded and will be on the Career to FW Facebook and YouTube channel. Please be sure to check each page and subscribe or follow for both of them. If you're on the Facebook page, it'll look something like this. If you'll click on that red arrow where you see the red arrow and follow us, that way you'll get the alert just like Jeff was talking about on your phone. It'll say Career DFW is now live on Facebook. And you can see all the videos by clicking on the video tab. And I've put everything in groups so you can see all the interviewing ones together, all the North Dallas ones together, all the Frisco Connect sessions are together. So everyone is together for us. If you're on the YouTube channel, it's the Career USA YouTube channel. If you click on playlist, it'll pop up and it'll show you what the created playlists are. And here's a list of them right down here at the bottom. And underneath any one of the events, if you click view full playlist where the red arrow is, you'll see all the events and everything that's been recorded there. So what we want to do now is everybody, if you make sure you open up your chat box, if you haven't already done this, I know a lot of people have already done this, we want you to make sure your message is going to everybody so that I can capture it. But in the chat box, we're looking for you to put your name, your phone, your email address, position you're looking for, and 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. Don't hit the return key after each entry, otherwise it'll come up with a bunch of different ones. But name, phone number, email address, position you're looking for, 2 or 3 target companies, and I will capture all this information and I will put it out in an email this afternoon to everybody. For those of you who are on Facebook, you're welcome to send me an email at txjmorr@yahoo.com. And I'll capture all that information, or if you want to put it here on the Facebook chat, I will go and capture that information on the chat. So we're glad everybody's with us. Hopefully you'll join us next week. Have a good weekend. Hopefully the dust storm won't be that bad from the Sahara dust storm as it moves through. And I will have to spend the weekend looking for another funny video for next week. So for everybody, thank you very much for being with us. I'll leave the chat. I'll leave the, let's see here. I will stop sharing and leave this open for everybody. So if anybody wants to chit chat, you're welcome to open your mic and chit chat all you want.